Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands, then lower cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the US. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IP Works Wonders.
Welcome to Dear Prudence. I'm your guest, Prudence Kristen Meinzer. I host a couple of other podcasts, including Buy the Book and How to Be Fine. Be sure to check those out if you love self-help books, hate self-help books, or want advice on how to be okay-ish rather than perfect. Today, we'll be answering questions about whether a spouse actually owes their partner an apology, a fiance anxious about future family finances, and someone trying to figure out whether or not to follow their supervisor's suggestions at work. Here to help me out today are two very talented real-life best friends, Adrienne Lee and Nylah Iqbal Muhammad. Adrienne offers advice in her column, Ask Adri Anything, answering readers' questions ranging from what to do when your close friend doesn't include you in their wedding party, eek, to ways to create boundaries with in-laws judgmental about your parenting style. And Nylah is a James Beard-nominated lifestyle writer whose work covers race, travel, food, and religious identity. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, HuffPost, and Travel and Leisure. Welcome to the show, Adrienne and Nylah.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Oh, we're so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you. Now, before we get started, we ask all of our guests the same question. What is one piece of unsolicited advice that you would give to the world unprompted? Nylah, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I would definitely tell people to not order oysters like anywhere that's not near fresh water, particularly Denver Union Station.
I think that is a great piece of advice. And it's also the kind of advice that we can follow. It's not like, do some soul searching into this or that. It's actually something that's very easy, that's very actionable, that we can all do. It does not matter where you are on your life trajectory. You can say, no, I am not ordering the oysters in Kansas City. You can make that decision. That's great, Nylah. All right, Adrienne, what about you? What is one piece of unsolicited advice you would share with the world?
Oh, I love unsolicited advice. I'm an oldest sister, so I've spent my life giving unsolicited advice to many people's chagrin, I'm sure. But I would say, I don't know that I made this up, but I still say it a lot, to go where the love is, to focus on the people who support you, the people who appreciate you, and the people who are who have your back. I think it's really, really easy to get distracted by who doesn't like you or who's critical of what you're doing. But no matter what you're trying to create or accomplish, if you can just really focus your energy and your attention on the folks that actually are here for you and what you're doing, it makes it 1,000 times easier.
That is such fantastic advice. I'm saying this as somebody who has, at various points in life, tried to chase the people who weren't giving me the love back. And why don't they like me? What's wrong? Don't they see how great I am? Why won't they love me back? Why don't the popular kids like me? Why doesn't this one person who seemed like they liked me, why are they suddenly turning their back on me? The right answer is, who cares? Go to where the love is. There are other people who love me. There are other people who love you. And yeah, we should spend our energy on those people, right?
For sure.
We should spend our love on them.
For sure.
That is such great advice, Adrienne. All right, we are going to take a very quick break, but when we're back, Adrienne, Nylah, you and I are going to dive into the listener questions. Stay with us, everyone.
This episode is brought to you by Discover. If you've listened to Dear Prudence for a while, you know how important acceptance is when it comes to your personal growth. And you know who else is big on acceptance? Discover. You see, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That's a whole lot of places and a whole lot of acceptance. which is great for Discover, but even better for you. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Planning any exciting trips this year? Something you might not be planning is learning the local language. Well, with Babbel, you only need a few weeks to learn. Babbel helps you learn real-life conversation skills in different languages, from Spanish, French, German, Italian, to Swedish, Dutch, Polish, Norwegian, Turkish, Indonesian, and Danish. And Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you actually hone your pronunciation and accent to get you sounding more like a local. There's no better feeling than speaking to a local and having them actually understand what you're saying. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks, or whatever pace you choose. Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. So this year, get talking with Babbel. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/Prudie. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/Prudie, spelled BABBEL.com/PRUDIE. Babbel.com/Prudie. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hey everyone, we're back and let's get started with our first letter of the day titled, Apologize for What?
So, a little background. 30 plus years ago, I dated someone I'll call Lauralee, who had 3 young daughters. Let's call them Carly and We dated for about a year before breaking up because she was unable to afford living in the area due to housing and childcare expenses, so she moved several hours away back to her parents. We tried the long distance thing for a bit, but with my work schedule and her living at home, it wasn't going to work. So last week, I was scheduled for an outpatient surgery and met with a nurse for pre-surgery instruction and after-surgery care. My wife was with me because she would be the caregiver after surgery. The nurse said her name was Carly, and I noticed on her name tag it was spelled with 2 E's, and along with her ethnic features, her dad was Japanese, I was 99% sure it was Lauralee's daughter. I asked her if she was Carly Song, and she looked at me a little weird and said, yes, but now my last name is Anders. I said, you probably don't remember me, but I dated your mom when you were younger. I had the pink or very faded red pickup truck. She said, oh yeah, we all liked that pink Barbie pickup. You also had that piano that played by itself. Do you still have that? I said, no, it was my parents, and when they passed, the player piano was sold. She said her family still talks about that piano. We made other small talk about her and her family's life, and that she had a half-brother after her mom got remarried, and I talked about my family. It wasn't more than a 5-minute conversation. When we left, my wife was mad. Her first excuse was that I shouldn't have been wasting time talking about our personal lives, and also that I didn't introduce her to Carly. I pointed out that I did mention her as my caregiver, and her name was on the paperwork. My wife already knew about Lauralee and her daughters, as I had brought it up before when we were naming our kids and general discussions about our past relationships. Now she wants me to apologize, and I asked, apologize for what? She says for embarrassing her. In overhearing a conversation with her sister, the real reason she's upset is that my face supposedly lit up when I was talking to Carly about her mom and her family. Carly and her family were important to me, and I had good memories from my life back then. My face very well could have lit up when talking to her, but I don't think I need to apologize for anything. Is there something I should be apologizing for?
I'm going to say absolutely yes, there is. But before I explain why, Adrienne and Nylah, I feel like I should let you both weigh in. Adrienne, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nylah and I are going to be pretty aligned to this, and maybe there's some miscommunication or some details left out in the letter. That's always a possibility. So there's always a grain of grace in whatever criticisms I'm giving. But I mean, even introducing your wife as your caretaker seems wild to me. It doesn't seem particularly respectful, especially given the context, but just in general. That's not my primary identity as your wife. And yeah, I think that you should just care about your wife's feelings. Like if she feels there's something to apologize for, I'm sort of curious why he isn't curious about figuring out the why, and delving further and just like doing the work to comfort her and rebuild their intimacy. That seems like a bit of a red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Nylah?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that one of the biggest red flags here is how like hyper focused he is on this sort of legalistic, like, I did nothing wrong. He didn't cheat. He didn't, you know, do anything that is technically wrong. But I find that people who are sort of obsessed with proving that they're in the right to sort of be, I don't know, assholes. Because it's not really about like whether he technically did anything wrong. It's about how, like Adrienne said, like how his wife feels. And yeah, like introducing your wife as your caretaker is crazy work. Like I'm surprised she didn't leave him at the hospital, honestly. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And being introduced that way already is minimizing who the wife is. But also, I just got to say, I don't think caretakers get enough love in this world. Caretaking is, for the most part, a thankless and exhausting task. And the caretakee rarely lights up and says, with stars in their eyes. They rarely say, "Oh, you're the light of my life. Thank you for all you do." They don't sparkle around their caretaker. They are at their worst with their caretaker usually. And on the flip side, they're watching you, letter writer, then light up and sparkle like a Christmas tree around somebody else and go down memory lane of somebody who you did love, somebody who you're making clear you have great memories with. And meanwhile, your wife's sitting there and she's like, "I'm just being introduced as the caretaker. I'm the one who's like wiping you up and getting you to the bathroom. This is who you delegated me to." And so it really is much more about the feelings here than who's right and who's wrong. And I believe your wife when she said you lit up like a Christmas tree around this other person, around this past vestige of a former love. That I believe her when you overheard her talking to her sister and she said it really hurt my feelings to see him do that. I believe her. She's not wrong about her feelings. Her feelings are not a lie. That's how she felt at the time. And maybe she doesn't feel brave or vulnerable enough to tell you this. And maybe one of the reasons she doesn't feel brave enough to say it is because you're still very much caught up in who's right and who's wrong here. So I want to second Adrienne and Nylah, what you two said about stop focusing on who's right here. It's not about who's right. You guys are completely spot on. This is about rebuilding intimacy. It's about trusting that somebody else's feelings are valid. And that should take the front seat here, not who's right or wrong.
I think that he should apologize because even though he's like the letter's titled Apologize for What, he's so focused on, like we said, like what he technically didn't do wrong. I think he should apologize for making her feel bad, and not like a if I made you feel bad. Just say like, I can tell that that really upset you and that it really hurt you and I hate that I hurt you and I'm sorry. Let's sort of discuss the deeper, reasons why you're hurt and what I can do to be a better partner because I don't want you to feel this way. I think it's actually quite simple. I think often sometimes though, the simplest things are hard for people to do because they require laying aside ego and actually caring about someone's feelings. But I think what he has to do now is pretty easy and, maybe inject some romance as well.
Yeah.
All of that is really simple. I think the question is whether he'll do it or not.
Yeah. Adrienne, anything you would add here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nylah that the apology needs to be the first thing. And I don't think it ever feels great to get sort of the kind of apology that you they don't really understand what they're apologizing for. So maybe it's, I'm really sorry. Clearly, I've hurt your feelings and I'd like to understand, and opening up space for his wife to explain, with some vulnerability and some honesty, exactly what it is that bothered you. This may be more than just one moment, right? Like this may be a pattern of his of being a little bit less than considerate. And additionally, I think it would be really beneficial if he could do some of that lighting up and glowing around his wife, not only the caretaking she's providing, but just who she has been for him and continues to be in their life together, because it sounds like she really just felt sort of ignored in that moment.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes. I second everything you two have just said. Ditto to all of that. Apologize for what you know you did wrong, and apologize for what you don't know you did wrong, and ask how you can do better, and aim to light up. I think that's the short list of things to do here. And you can get through this. I know that it can be hard for a lot of couples. It is a lifetime challenge to get past that I didn't do anything wrong feeling, that lifetime challenge of not focusing on who's right. This isn't about who's right or wrong. Focus on love and doing what you can to make sure the other person in your life feels loved and that you feel loved in return. That's really what the main ambition should be. This isn't Jeopardy. You don't need to be right all the time.
Yes.
Our next question is titled Financially Freaked Out Fiance.
My fiance and I are getting married in February, and his family's financial situation is becoming a serious red flag to me. For context, his parents moved from Ghana, Africa in the 80s and started their family in Texas. The father passed away last year and left nothing, and my fiance had to pay for the majority of the funeral. The mom works in mortgage lending and owns her own home, but had a stroke recently and has been slowing down due to her health, as well as the mortgage market. I mentioned the Ghanaian bit because in their culture, the kids take care of the parents when they age, unlike in America, which is the opposite expectation. Lately, his mom has been calling for a lot of money. It has escalated from a few hundred to thousands. This week, she's asking for $5,000. She's having trouble keeping up with her mortgage payments, and she needs a new hot water heater. I love my future mother-in-law. She's a good person, but my fiancé feels despair, his actual word, that he can't help her more. His other brother has drawn a strict boundary about giving her money. He won't, because he has a mortgage and 2 kids. His little brother is 30 and lives rent-free with his mom and makes $11.50 an hour. He also hits my fiancé up for money, for his car, dental care, all necessary things, but for heaven's sake, get a better job. My fiancé makes decent money in tech, but I'm an artist and we're paying for a wedding that's coming in 2 months. We're both living in New York City and don't have a ton of cash right now. I think there's also the unspoken pressure to carry the burden because we are child-free by choice. The mom is very stubborn about taking financial advice because her degree is in finance, and she becomes indignant when my fiancé asks for details. She lives in a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, and I think she should absolutely sell and move into an appropriately sized home. But my fiancé gets touchy, saying that his mother would never be okay with that, and if she had to leave, he would feel, quote, as if he failed. I don't think her financial situation is going to get any better. And though she keeps us in the dark about the entirety of her financial situation, her retirement savings seems lackluster. As the new wife who makes less money than my fiancé, I don't feel like I can suggest anything, but I see my fiancé under a lot of pressure and emotional stress, and it's weighing on me now too. How do we proceed, and how does my fiancé find peace with whatever he decides to do? Should I be more strict about my boundaries? Just to be clear, I have always been supportive of helping them financially if we're able, but I am genuinely nervous that if we don't find a clear path forward, he will become the breadwinner for his mother and brother, and our future plans will be contingent on their needs. I don't want to resent him or his family. Help.
Okay, I'm silently screaming in my heart right now because financial stuff like this, it just makes me so anxious. I am somebody who penny pinches. I'm very thrifty. I stay on top of my money. And the whole idea of having no control over what's happening here or feeling like I have no control over it makes me crazy. But Nylah, Adrienne, what about you two? Nylah, let's start with your initial reactions.
So I definitely feel like she has a lot of valid concerns, truly. I think, however, the fact that the cultural thing was mentioned and the fact that I think some of her fiance's feelings are confusing to her, like the despair he feels or that he would feel like a failure if his mom had to move out of the family home. This is what I'm sort of also interpreting. Like she refers to it as her mother-in-law's home, but she may see it as like the family home where she raised her kids, where she wants to have grandkids come over. Like it just may have a little bit more meaning, and that might be why she doesn't want to leave. I do think that maybe a little bit of compromise here would be good culturally. I think if she could understand where those feelings were coming from, um, that might be really helpful to her to move forward. Yeah, because I definitely feel like the need for transparency is very valid and real. But on the other hand, sort of, I think the confusion of the feelings might be where they're able to bridge that gap and really make communication better, because I think that's a very common thing amongst immigrant families, and not just immigrant families, but people from various cultural backgrounds, is that we do want to take care of our parents and we do sort of have different cultural expectations. And I think a lot of that has been very demonized in very individualistic American culture. But there's sort of middle ground to be found between like hyper individualism and also like giving so much that you don't have anything left for yourself. I think there's a middle ground, and I think maybe they can both find it together with a little bit of mutual understanding.
Yeah. More often than not, there is middle ground that we're just not acknowledging. I think that's so true. Adrienne, what about your initial thoughts?
Kristen, if you were screaming in like, as somebody who saves and penny pinches, I was screaming as somebody who's divorced, because whenever I get letters about like relationship stress before a wedding, I just want to like shake the writer and say, have you actually articulated this to your person, to your fiance, in ways that are clear? I am sure that this feels really hard to say because she knows her fiance loves his family and values that closeness and values that like interdependence that they all kind of share. But I also think sometimes we avoid saying, hey, this doesn't work for me, because we're afraid that the answer will be, well, then we don't work. But it's much, much better, again, as a divorced lady, to know that before you get married than years and years after. So I guess that would be my first piece of advice for her, is to just, as calmly and respectfully as she can, sort of articulate her feelings. And if she can think through them, what compromises she's comfortable making and what compromises she's not comfortable making where this is concerned. I do think Nylah is spot on about some of the cultural pieces. I did think it was really interesting that the writer shared her fiance's background, but not her own. But that's okay. But like, there are compromises to be made. Like, your fiance is probably always going to feel very accountable to his mother, and that's okay. But you guys can perhaps talk about like, here's a concrete, financial number that we can afford to part with every year. And after that, that's just all that we have to give. So hopefully they can get to that place and find a compromise that works for everybody.
I hope so too. And I 100% agree that conversations need to happen now, not after you're married. And I hate to say this because nobody wants to postpone a wedding, but you might need to postpone the wedding to have these tough conversations. Money is depending on what surveys you look at, it's either the number one or the number two reason that divorce happens, because couples cannot get on the same page about money. And I can't be personally, as I said, I'm a penny pincher. I can't be with somebody who is like this kid staying with his mom making $11 an hour still. I can't be with people like that. I can't be with somebody who lets people completely, freeload off of them. Like the mom is like letting her son do this. Oh my God. I could never be in a relationship with the mom in this story. It makes me want to tear my hair out. And I think you and your fiance need to be on the same page of What are you okay with? What's going to make you not want to tear your hair out? What's going to make your fiance not feel overwhelmed with guilt and self-recrimination for not doing enough? What is going to be an area of agreement? And that may mean meeting with two different kinds of counselors, a relationship counselor as well as a financial advisor who can help you map all of this out and make decisions. And something that I really appreciate the letter writer brought up is they are, according to themselves, a cash-strapped artist themselves too. So they have to be accountable of what they're bringing to the relationship and really how much say everybody feels comfortable with, everybody having in this story. Is the cash-strapped artist really the one to say to their fiance, I want all your money to go toward me now and not your mom, which is not, by the way, what the letter writer is saying. The letter writer is saying, like, I'm okay with helping out the mom, but only to a certain extent. But just, be mindful of that dynamic. Be mindful of what you are and aren't bringing to the table and how that might come up in an uncomfortable way in certain conversations. It might be uncomfortable having some of these conversations. In fact, I'm just going to say it right now. A lot of this is going to be uncomfortable. A lot of it is going to get to other ideas beyond money. It's going to get to ideas of loyalty, ideas of family, ideas of how you see the world and how you see yourselves, who gets priority in certain situations and so on. So this is going to bring up a lot of stuff that maybe you're not comfortable with, but you need to have these conversations now. It's better to postpone a wedding than to get a divorce because, my God, divorces are expensive and logistically they are a pain in the butt. So
Can confirm.
Yes. So if you can, postpone the wedding and just focus on all of this stuff. Or if you are an overachiever, get all of this taken care of before the wedding in the next 2 months if you can. But don't wait until later. And just one other thing I want to mention here, you can't get people to change their behavior. You're not going to get your mom to sell. You're not going to get your mother-in-law to sell the house. You're not going to get your brother-in-law to stop being a deadbeat. You can't change that behavior. But one thing you can do is talk with them. And specifically, your fiance can have talks with them. Your fiance maybe should have a summit with his brothers and find out, how did you draw boundaries and why? Why are you okay saying, no, mom, I'm not helping you anymore? Or in the case of the one brother who's the leech, why are you okay just leeching off of mom and not paying her rent? Why are you okay only making $11 an hour? Maybe that's something that your brother can do. He can broach that conversation. But lots of conversations sound like they need to be had here. And yeah, they are going to be uncomfortable. They are. Anything else you would add, Adrienne and Nylah?
I mean, as an artist myself, I know that financial stability is not something I could probably ever really bring to a relationship. So yeah, sort of being aware of that when you're sort of being stop giving money to your mom. It's sort of well, what are you bringing to this whole dynamic? So it might also just be that they're not compatible for each other. She might want a partner that makes a significant amount of money but doesn't have a lot of other financial commitments, and he might want a partner that can maybe help him take care of his mom, or because that might be what makes him happy, is taking care of his family. It might genuinely make him happy to be able to do that.
I would add in her slight defense too that she's already going into this feeling like she's at a bit of a deficit. I'm an artist. I don't make a ton of money. It seems like some people would be okay going into a relationship with someone who makes more and understanding that they're a bit more in charge of the finances. I wouldn't. I want a partner. I want a partner in every sense, including financial. I want them to care about my opinions, even if I'm making less money, especially because incomes can evolve throughout a marriage. So, that's another thing worth them getting on the same page about, right? Is that sort of financial equity and how decisions are made and how finances are prioritized. It's huge.
Yeah, I think all of that is so important to discuss, and do it now, not later. Yeah. What happens if one of us has a car that breaks down? At that point, am I taking this percentage of my income to pay for that, or are you paying for it? And it's not sexy, but sometimes getting down on that spreadsheet and looking at percentages is the best way to fix these kinds of financial conundrums. Numbers, spreadsheets, they can fix a lot of things.
Agreed.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we'll be reading more of your letters. Stay with us.
Planning any exciting trips this year? Something you might not be planning is learning the local language. Well, with Babbel, you only need a few weeks to learn. Babbel helps you learn real-life conversation skills in different languages, from Spanish, French, German, Italian, to Swedish, Dutch, Polish, Norwegian, Turkish, Indonesian, and Danish. And Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you actually hone your pronunciation and accent to get you sounding more like a local. There's no better feeling than speaking to a local and having them actually understand what you're saying. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks, or whatever pace you choose. Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. So this year, get talking with Babbel. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/Prudie. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/Prudie, spelled BABBEL.com/PRUDIE. Babbel.com/Prudie. Rules and restrictions may apply.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, whatever the occasion, it just got a little more personal with meaningful photo gifts from Shutterfly. Add a silly photo to a gold-rimmed mug for your bestie. Put your sweet puppy on a cozy fleece blanket for your teen. Gift your husband a desktop plaque featuring all the kids. Enjoy 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
Welcome back to Dear Prudence. I'm Kristen Meinzer, sitting in for Janae, and I'm here with my guests, Adrienne Lee and Nylah Iqbal Muhammad, to answer your questions. The next one is titled, Doing It for Her and Him.
Some background. I'm 51. I graduated into the workforce in the mid-90s, just before the internet completely changed everything. I think any ex-journalist reading this will know what I mean. I stuck it out for a while, but the pay wasn't great, and the writing was on the wall for those of us who weren't already pushed out of the industry. After a series of communications jobs and some freelancing, about 3.5 years ago, I landed a job editing technical documents. It's not exciting, but it's steady work. Now, note the time frame. I was hired at the height of COVID, and the office was fully remote. This suited me just fine. The office building is way out in airport country, a good hour from where I live with decent traffic. There was nothing about the work that required our team to be in any one place, and I, for one, was never someone who enjoyed the office culture aspect of my previous jobs. While I knew the situation wouldn't last forever, I took heart in the fact that our team kept its numbers up while working remotely, and our department had talked often about using that data to have a conversation with senior management about how things would look post-pandemic. Well, someone had that conversation, and we weren't invited to it. As soon as it was deemed safe, everyone in the company was ordered back in, 2 days a week, which was revised to 3 days after a couple months, and now they're floating the idea of 4 days because too many of us aren't coming in 3 days a week. We've lost a lot of staff, some of whom were promised permanent work from home when they signed on, and the rest of us are not thrilled by the long commutes and the pointlessness of coming in to do the exact same jobs we had done at home for years. I'm at the point where I don't have any confidence in senior management caring about the many ways in which employees are voicing their discontent at how return to the office was handled. And I'm keeping an eye on the job sites for other possibilities. In the meantime, I've resigned myself to giving them what they want. I show up, put in the required hours, doing the assigned workload, and just that, while focusing on the parts of the job that I do like, the editing challenges, sharing war stories with the other members of my team. I have neither the time nor interest in a workplace committee or professional development opportunities or making my way up any corporate ladders. Well, here's my problem. How open should I be about my leave me alone attitude? I recently had a performance review with my manager, and while she said plenty of nice things about my productivity and contributions to the team, she made it clear that I should consider my career and get involved in those workplace committees and put myself in places where I get noticed by senior staff, etc. And part of me feels like it's just something she's telling all of our team members because she's required to say it, and I shouldn't take it too seriously. Another part of me wants to vent and tell her that I'll give a damn about what this company wants from me when I get the slightest hint that it cares at all about what I want. I'm not someone who's likely to go that second route, but I do wonder what I should say when she follows up and sees that I'm not doing any more than what I'm contractually required to in my role. I like her, and I often feel like she's just as over the corporate BS as the rest of us. But I've had too many bad experiences in the past with bosses who say they want honesty and then retaliate when they don't like what they hear. Any thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts, but Adrienne and Nylah, I want to hear your thoughts. Adrienne, let's start with you.
Sure. I too have lots of thoughts. I think I actually do some similar work to this person, and probably in a fairly similar environment. So, I mean, I think just generally speaking, I can understand the frustration that folks have, with our evolving sort of workplace landscape with work from home policies changing, and it changing the routines we've built since COVID became a thing. He talks a lot about, that frustration, but his question really centers on something kind of different. And it's, do I need to be honest with my boss that I don't care about the social sort of interaction or relationship-based pieces of the job? And I would say, I don't think you need to be honest because I think it's apparent, which is why she's talking to you about it. I don't think you're probably in danger of losing your job as a result of that sort of obvious approach to the work, which is a little bit more insular, a little bit more heads down, I'm just here to do my job and leave kind of. I just think the flip side of that is, you don't get to be frustrated if you get passed over for promotions or, your reviews remain sort of middle of the road. Like, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. But I think in a setting like that, where they're looking for people to go above and beyond, there's probably going to be consequences for it professionally. And it's just totally up to you if you're okay with that and if you're going into it with your eyes sort of wide open about it.
Yeah. Nylah, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree with Adrienne. It does sort of sound, I was a bit confused. I wasn't really understanding what the question really was. And I guess I sort of landed at a place of, I felt like he's asking us, is it okay for me to vent sort of about these frustrations, which I think you absolutely can. But I think sort of that type of venting should be reserved for when you are ready to quit, because in my experience of watching people with jobs like this, being laid off comes soon after that kind of venting. And, definitely have a lot of criticism about various corporations and the way that they run and treat their workers. But I think just being aware of sort of the cost of things is always important before we sort of vent our frustrations. It does sound like the manager is aware. So personally, I don't think that there's a need to be more honest. I think if the letter writer is looking for a new job, maybe that process could be sort of escalated to get to a more content place. But I don't think any venting is necessary unless he is A, wanting to vent, and B, ready to leave.
Yeah. I second what you're saying, that now is the time to double down on the job search for another job. It sounds like this is not making the letter writer happy, this job. There is the question, though, of when the follow-up meeting happens with the supervisor, how much to say or not to say. And I do think it's totally fine in the follow-up meeting to say a few things. I'm not saying to fully vent or, do those things that may coincidentally result in a layoff in a few months. But I do think it's okay to ask certain questions, to say, we were told frankly that there would be a conversation happening about us only having to come into the office for 2 days a week, what happened to that conversation? Is there a chance that things will be amended to go back to that? And if so, what would lead to that? Would it be different performance benchmarks? Would it be, meeting different, goals for the department quarterly? What would need to happen for that conversation to be reignited, to happen again? Because I really, have to be honest with you, and you don't have to be fully honest, but you can say, putting in those extra hours commuting each time I come in, the extra cost for gas, it really does now end up being more expensive for me every time I work in the office. So I really would like to revisit that conversation. We were told that it was going to happen for all of us. We weren't included in the conversation. What can be done right now? And it may be that, sadly, nothing can be done. A lot of corporate overlords like to have a button every chair. They want to see people there. And I hate to say it, letter writer, it sounds like you're very hardworking, but some people, when they work from home, aren't as productive. Some people maybe aren't delivering as much as you are right now. And maybe that's something you can discuss with your supervisor also. You say that you're doing good work and you're delivering where you should be delivering, and even your supervisor acknowledges that. Maybe there's a way to work that to your advantage and see if that can be a negotiating factor here. Because it sounds like you don't actually hate the job itself. You just don't like going in more than 2 days a week. You can do 2 days a week fine, but more than that, you really don't want to do. So I would talk about that, but then also really double down on the job search to try and find a place that lets you work remotely all of the time or most of the time, or that is not far from your home. Because man, an hour commute each way to the airport, God, and then you're dealing with airport traffic during rush hour. Oh God, what a nightmare. That's terrible. So if you can find a way around that, talk with your supervisor about it. As far as career development, professional development stuff, a lot of supervisors have to say that because it's a supervisor's job to help you with your professional development. And that's what a good supervisor does. They want to see, are there ways that you can achieve more and do more? And, you might need to just smile and nod along at this point, but not necessarily join those committees and not do things that you don't want to do. Because it sounds like you don't care if you're promoted or not. And I get that. I've definitely had jobs before where I'm like, no, I like being the cog in the machine. I don't want to be a supervisor. I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to be promoted. And maybe you are a maker and not a manager, and that's okay too. Maybe that's something you can say to your supervisor, or maybe it's something you can just politely dance around for now and not actually discuss. But know what you want, because knowing what you want will help you to make the next steps you need to. Anything else, Nylah and Adrienne, you'd add here?
No, absolutely. Just echoing. Knowing what you want is always great in the workplace. It just makes everything more clear and keeps your career trajectory balanced and on the right path.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is somebody who feels fortunate to work primarily remote. And again, I'm in comms like this writer is. And I would just challenge him also on the days that he is going in. It never feels, good to be forced. And so maybe that's sort of coloring his experience when he is in the office. But at least in my comms experience, a lot of the work is very relational. It does help to have quick access to people. It does help to have decent relationships with people. And so if he can try to, since he has to be there anyways, spend those days with a slightly better attitude, trying to get the most out of it and seeing if it actually improves his work over time, that might make this less frustrating as well. But I agree with you as well, Kristen, that if he can have some honest conversations about his own ambitions or lack thereof, and what he thinks makes sense for the career that he wants, maybe he can get to a place where he's only expected in those 2 days or even one, but that in doing that, he's really making the most of those days of that compromise.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's great additional advice. Yeah. On the days you're there, be a superstar, or just be a slightly better version of yourself.
Right. I love what Adrienne said, because also, like, if he's looking for a new job, having good relationships in his current workplace will make that easier. Like in comms, in writing, in media, like so many people know each other and it overlaps. And, not that he should go around his current workplace announcing that he's looking for a new job, but just building those friendships can make that search a lot easier. And it's very difficult right now to get communications jobs and writing jobs and media jobs. Like it's very difficult. So whatever leg up he can get through the connections he has right now would be helpful at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You two are so wise. You're the best people to have for this question. So good. All right. Those are all the questions we have for this week. Nylah, Adrienne, let our listeners know, please, where can they find more of you and your great work?
Well, my name is Adrienne. You can find me on Substack at Ask Adri Anything. All the information to get in contact with me is there as well. I would love to hear from you.
And Nylah?
And I am Nylah, and you can find me on Instagram at Yum Coconut Milk. I love that handle because I don't actually like coconut milk, so it's ironic. But yeah, that's where you can find me in my work.
Nice. And listeners, you can hear more of me on How to Be Fine, Buy the Book, and some of the many other shows I host. I currently host 4 other shows. Do you need help getting along with partners, relatives, coworkers, and people in general? Write to Prudie. Go to slate.com/Prudie. That's slate.com/PRUDIE. The Dear Prudence column publishes every Thursday. Dear Prudence was produced this week by Maura Currie and Vic Whitley-Berry with editorial help from Paula De Verona. Daisy Rosario is senior supervising producer, and I'm your guest Prudence, Kristen Meinzer. That's all for this episode, but join us on today's episode of Prudie Plus, where Adrienne, Nylah, and I answer a question from someone raising their niece and trying to help them navigate a changing family. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/Prudie Plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available for you to listen to right now. We'll see you over there.